Everyone has their own unique views and needs when it comes to financial success. If you'd like to leave your financial woes behind and live a life of financial freedom, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Saving with Steve show, hosted by Steve Sexton. The show will help you with the ins and outs of money. We talk about financial issues that could be costing you thousands of dollars and keeping you up at night. We talk about money, tax reduction, saving more, spending less, 401ks, risk management, retirement, and everything under the sun that relates to you having a healthier, happy relationship with money. Now, here is your host of Saving with Steve, Steve Sexton, on UK Health Radio.
Hey, welcome to the Saving with Steve show, where we talk about the ins and outs of money, pretty much everything under the sun that relates to you having a happier, healthy relationship with money. My name is Steve Sexton. I want to thank you for joining us today. Hey, I appreciate you sharing it with your friends and family and associates. Our listeners keep expanding. We have a wonderful group. If you have comments, would like to hear a specific topic, go to viewers at savingwithsteve.us. Or if you'd like to just check out the website and see almost all 90 episodes, you can go to savingwithsteve.us. You guest gifts, the whole shot. And again, I want to thank you for joining us. Last week, we had Maddie Lamson. He's a scientist, nutritionist, podcast host, health coach that specializes in weight loss, self-confidence for professional women and busy moms. Maddie has a weekly podcast. It's really cool. You got to check it out. It's How to Not Get Sick and Die. Provides his followers and clients with a deep dive into nutrition, how to develop healthy habits that last. If you'd like to hear more and see more, you can always go to savingwithsteve.us and look at episode 88. Today, I'm going to be talking about expensive retirement planning mistakes. You want to make sure you're there for that. The start of the pandemic brought many changes to the job market, and 2 years later, we're still feeling the effects. The latest Magnify Money study finds that the proportion of working adults 65 and older is rising, and older Americans are coming out of retirement. This comes from rising wages, inflations, labor shortages, the whole shot, and we're starting to see a changing of the economy right now. I'd like to welcome Ismat Mangla. She's from Magnify Money. It was really interesting. There was a study that came out from Managed Money just a few months ago about how older age adults are starting to go back to work. We're going to talk about those reasons, but we've also, in the last couple of months, we've really seen our economic world change to the point where there used to be like 11.4 million jobs out there. Now we're seeing inflation rise. People are spending less. I mean, we heard the CEO from Ford just last week say, hey, we have far too many employees. Others in the tech field are looking to retrench and cut down their workforce. We've seen many changes in the cryptocurrency world. All sorts of things are going on. So, Ismat, welcome to the show. A lot to unpack today.
A lot to unpack. Thanks for having me again, Steve. It's always fun to be here.
You know what? We're just glad that you're a wealth of knowledge. And I know you do all the research and you do all the reporting and things like that. So just a few months ago, that article came out that you guys put out. It talks about older age workers going back to work. I mean, talking people over the age of 65. So what are the primary reasons why they were going back to work?
Yeah. So what Magnify Money did was we looked at the U.S. Census Bureau Household Pulse Survey data, and we looked at what things were like in spring of 2020 and then what they were like in spring of 2022. And what we found was that a rising share of adults who are 65 and older are working compared with like 2 years ago, right? So the figures jumped about a couple of percentage points. That was interesting, right? Like, why are these folks 65? That's generally when we think people are going to just relax, retire. So why are we seeing that number rise? And I think we can look at sort of what's happened in the state of the world and economically. There are several reasons why that might be the case. For example, there has been a lot of competition among businesses for workers. We've seen that. We've seen sign-on bonuses. We've seen better benefits. We've seen a lot of choice for job seekers over the last couple of years. Now, is that changing now? Yeah, we're going to start seeing that change for sure. But the period that we were looking at, definitely, there was just a lot of opportunity. We saw in April 2020, unemployment spiked to about almost 15%. But by April 2022, that unemployment was back down to 3.6%. So, and employers have been fighting for really good talent. At the same time, wages have gone up, and that's a good thing. But I would also argue that the real value of those wages is not really what it doesn't correspond to how much they've gone up. We've seen inflation just get out of control. It's hit a 40-year high. Just yesterday, we saw the Fed raise rates again to try to basically tame it. And so it's really reached that level now. But even up until then, like inflation was like slowly creeping up and people's money is just not going as far as it once did, right? So those things like the higher pay, higher inflation, all of those things may have sort of encouraged folks to go back to work. But let's also not forget about retirement savings, right? If you're going to retire, you want to have a nice nest egg. And we certainly saw the market, take a downturn in 2020. We saw a lot of recovery, but then this year has had a lot of volatility. So I can see why, a higher rate of older adults probably just need to work a little bit more, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think all of those reasons are why folks may be sort of returning to the workforce. I've also anecdotally talked to a lot of folks who are just like, 65 is not that old. Like, I want to keep going. Like, I want to stay active. And, like where we're living to 85, 90, 95 years old, like, there's only so much golf you can play, I guess.
Well, actually, that's an excellent sentiment because when the Tax Cuts and Job Acts went in place, they moved the required minimum distribution to 72. But it basically was done because older wage workers are working longer. Right. And you know what? In the Secure Act 2, it looks like they might be pushing it to 73, 74, 75. And again, it's because people are working longer. Now, you know what? On top of that, and I can also see where when you say, I love the statement anecdotally, but if you take a look at it, there's many people, depending on how they were invested in the market in the last few months, have lost 20, 30, 40, 50%. And if they were involved in cryptocurrency, they might have lost 60 or 70%. Now, if you're retired, that's a game-changing, life-changing amount of money to lose, especially if you're planning to take a regular income. So if you think about, hey, I lost 30%, I'm going to have to make up 43% to get even, number one. And number two, if I'm taking out income, it's going to be that much harder. So if we go back to, people that were in 2008, many of them were, had just recently retired. And you know what? They felt, hey, I have to go back to work or I have to downsize my house, move somewhere else to a smaller, I have to cut back significantly. One of the biggest mistakes people make, and I just did this on, I'll be doing this today, is taking on too much risk for retirement, not looking at other ways. Sorry,
I was just going to say it underscores the importance of how you have to really be careful about planning your investments and like checking in, as you age, because you shouldn't be like in 80, 90% stocks when you're, close to retirement because you're just taking a very big gamble, right? And that is really devastating. I mean, that's life-changing for a lot of folks. One thing I did notice that in our findings was that I thought was really interesting, which was that more than a quarter of those folks who are 65 and older who are working are actually self-employed. And that number is about triple the rate of what working Americans between the ages of 25 and 39. So I thought that was interesting because I think it tells you that sometimes folks are sort of taking like maybe launching businesses or going in a slightly different direction from where they might have been in their career, right? Like, or maybe they're doing more like contract type of work. And maybe that sort of helps kind of manage the kind of lifestyle that they want as well. I just thought that was really fascinating.
I think it's wonderful. There's many people that I work with currently that work as consultants. Mm-hmm. They actually tutor people in English, math, all sorts of stuff. And that's their self-employed business. I know one that actually helps kids take the SAT and the ACT and they just love working with kids. They hated their 40 years of work life. So they wanted to do something that was fun. And they're doing it because they want to have something to do, number one, because they can't find other things that they like doing. And two, the income has enhanced their ability to retire in the fashion they like. So since they're self-employed, they can pick and choose when they take vacations. They're not working all the time. So you know what? It's not surprising that most of the people are good 25% are self-employed.
And it's a great way to leverage, like you said, like I have relatives of my own who, are retired, but then they have a lot to offer and can do that kind of consulting that can really help, newer businesses flourish. So I think that's great. And it's so right that you're saying that sometimes folks just learn kind of new skills and pursue a different industry. Even things like certain jobs like, school bus driving or something like that. A lot of times that kind of thing really appeals to older adults who just want like a part-time schedule. They, want something kind of like low key, but, keeps them active and busy. So I do see that there are a lot of opportunities and ways to sort of redefine your career as you, reach that quote unquote retirement age.
Yeah. The bus driver thing, it's so interesting because I know somebody who does that. He's 70 years old. And he goes, the best part about it for me is just listening to the kids and the crazy stuff that they say. It's just so funny. And he says, more importantly, it's he goes, he has like freshmen and sophomores in high schools. And he just says, you know what? The girls and boys who like each other, he says, it's so silly the way they talk and flirt and all that stuff. He goes, where did they come up with that stuff? So it makes his life enjoyable.
Anthropological study, basically watching these kids interact, I bet.
Hey, everybody, you're going to have to stick with us. We got more from Ismat, Mangla, and Magnified Money talking about older age workers. So stick with us. We're going to be right back.
More expert advice for having a happier relationship with money still to come on the Saving with Steve show on UK Health Radio.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
Welcome back to the show that is here to help you achieve your financial goals. It's the Saving with Steve show. Now here's your host, Steve Sexton on UK Health Radio.
Hey, welcome back to the Saving with Steve show where we talk about the ins and outs of money. You know what? I want to thank you all for joining us. If you would like to check out other episodes, you can always go to savingwithsteve.us. I'd like to say thank you to our affiliates at UK Health Radio, BBS Radio, Talk Radio New York City, AM/FM 247, our wonderful distributors. You know what? They're all about helping us, our listeners live a life of personal and financial freedom. Now, if you'd like to go to Saving with Steve Sexton on Facebook, you can get guest gifts, behind the scenes stuff. It's wonderful. And by the way, every Thursday we have a Saving with Steve short. It's a simple little topic on how to improve your retirement. Now we're back with Ismat Mangla, and we've been talking about, seniors going back to work, why, and so on. And before we begin, I just want to add this. And speaking with a lot of people before we did this, we're actually talking about this right now. I have found that everybody has a different reason for going back to work, but more importantly, a different reason for choosing what they do. I have a gentleman. He's actually 76 years old. He retired the first time in 1965. He's an engineer, just loves to solve problems. Okay. And he is retired probably 5 or 6 times. We call him the serial retirer. And basically what he does is he sends his wife on trips with her friends, and he just likes to solve problems. And he went there because he wanted to have to keep his mind strong by doing that. I have others that work at food pantries. And you know what? They're people who have that abundance in life. And what they like to do is they will sort through all the fruits and vegetables and food that comes into the food pantry, get it all boxed up for people who are coming in. And he likes to, hand out food, or both he and his wife love to hand out food to people who are in need.
It's also a chance for folks to redefine what their live out their values in a different way. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's a really cool thing. Like, you still want to work, but you don't necessarily have to work in that corporate job. Like your friend, doing the food pantry stuff or solving problems. Is your friend available to help me solve some of my problems? I could use someone like that in my life.
Only if it's engineering.
Oh, okay. All right.
He works for an aerospace company. He just likes doing that stuff.
Awesome.
But you know what? Now, when it comes to the economic times that we're dealing with right now, where people are, or companies are looking at, hey, look, we've got let's not mince words here. I believe we have a recession on its way. In fact, if you look at the stock market is a lagging indicator. So I would think we're already there. And with interest rates continuing to rise, there's less and less people are going to spend because they don't have the money. And it's going to be much more expensive for them to borrow anything, taking up more and more of their money. So there's a lot going on there. So, you know, when you're looking at, hey, the world is changing and I'm an older adult looking for a position somewhere, and maybe some do need to work, it's just not an enhancement. What would your advice be to somebody in that situation?
Yeah, that's a good question. It can be hard for some older folks to sort of navigate the job market, like if they're not in it right now. I would say the best thing to do there is really to learn the ins and outs of really how to navigate the online way that a lot of employers operate now, especially when it comes to, keyword recognition and things like that. A lot of organizations recommend that older job seekers sort of age-proof their resumes, right? By sort of limiting them to more recent job experience or removing graduation dates. But that said, I actually think there's also a way for older workers to position themselves and market themselves as mentors who can help younger workers who don't have as much experience grow, right? Because they have a wealth of knowledge and background and skills, and that is valuable. It's really just about how you frame it and how you market it. The other thing I would say is that it doesn't matter how old you are. It's always going to be great to learn some new skills or pursue some different industries to kind of help you find work, right? So you might reach out to your social circle and say, hey, like, are there certain industries that are hiring and what are the sort of skills needed there? With the advent of the internet, everything is at your fingertips, at least when it comes to trying to brush up on certain skills. Mm-hmm. And I would just encourage folks to be brave about that and identify what are one or two things that I can sort of polish up on to make myself, kind of a better fit in this job market. But I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's definitely tough, especially as employers now are, we're seeing, first we were seeing hiring freezes. Now I'm starting to see layoffs, right? Like earnings reports aren't what, a lot of companies hope they're going to be. So that whole great resignation that we saw, and then it was a buyer's market really for job seekers. I personally think that tide is turning now. And so I would really encourage anyone, not just older workers, to, kind of shore up their finances but also keep themselves in good shape for whatever lies ahead, right? So that means keep your resume up to date, keep your network alive. All of those things are really important. You've got to prepare for that rainy day when it's not raining. And for some people, it might be sprinkling a little bit, but we still have some time to, kind of set yourself up for success.
The only other thing that I would add is in this world, if you're an older age worker, that means you're likely a baby boomer or a builder, but most builders are in their 80s right now. But that baby boomer generation is now dealing with millennials, Gen X, Gen Y, the whole shot. So it'd be one of those things where from a mindset standpoint, you're going to have to focus on communicating with people of different generations. And it isn't, quite frankly, I'm a boomer, but when I started, it was like, you know what, you got, a little yelling at, when you didn't do right. And now it's got to be completely different because people don't respond to that. In fact, you get a harassment complaint.
That's true.
Hey, Ismat, thank you so much for joining us today. I know it seems like it goes really fast, especially when you have a wonderful guest like you. So
it really does. You need to have me back more often, Steve.
We probably will. So, hey, look, everybody, you want to go to Magnified Money and just go take a look at the articles. So some really good information in there, the studies that they do. You know what? It's just something special. So, Ismat, thank you so much for being with us today. I wish you safety, health, and success, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Yeah, thanks so much again, Steve. It was a lot of fun.
All right, see you soon.
Take care.
More expert advice for having a happier relationship with money still to come on the Saving with Steve show on UK Health Radio. Welcome back to the show that is here to help you achieve your financial goals. It's the Saving with Steve show. Now here's your host, Steve Sexton on UK Health Radio.
Welcome back to the Saving with Steve show, where we talk about the ins and outs of money. That was Ismat Mangla from Magnifying Money. She's part of the Value Penguin Group. And we're just lucky to have her here to shed some light and unpack the idea that many older age workers are beginning to work more and the things that they do, how to look about going about it. And you know what? Go to magnifymoney.com. They've got some great articles. Now, today, you know what? I just want to talk a little bit about expensive retirement planning mistakes. Retirement planning is definitely no walk in the park. It's complicated. No surprise that many of us make mistakes that can turn retirement dreams into a last-minute panic. As retirement nears, there's a ton of things to think about, like when to take Social Security, how much to take out of your 401k, creating a spending plan that you can stick to and invest your retirement savings. And like the butterfly effect, the decisions now can lead to huge life-altering consequences down the road. The reality is I've got some little biggest retirement mistakes and how to avoid them. So let's talk about the first one. Failing to plan is planning to fail. A happy retirement is one that's stress-free. How do you eliminate stress? Simple, by having a plan. When you want to go somewhere, hey, you don't do this by jumping in your car, driving all around, trying to figure out where it is, and eventually arrive. What you do is you hit your Waze app or your Google Maps, and you put in the address and you follow it. Simple as that. A financial plan is plotting the different shortest path to reach your retirement goals. Decide what you're going to do, where you're going to do it, how much it's going to cost, and where the money will come from. All parts of your plan. But if your plan changes as you approach retirement, that's okay. It's your plan. You're welcome to change it. Now, does it making a plan sound complicated? Well, it is and it isn't. The best way to set up a plan is to find yourself a qualified financial planner who can help get you in and out of some trouble, okay? Or not in and out, but out of trouble, and help you create a plan that allows you to retire the way you want. Second thing, putting off till tomorrow, which you should have started yesterday. According to recent studies by Bankrate, the biggest financial regret is not saving enough for retirement. And why don't Americans save enough? Because it's putting it off. You know, some of us say, hey, I'll wait till tomorrow till I have the money, or I'll start when I get closer to retirement. The thing is, the longer you wait, the harder it will be. In other words, starting small sooner is better than starting large later. Just think about this. If you started at the age of 25, just putting away $500 a month for 40 years, 5% return, you're going to have a little over $700,000. If you had an average of 10% return, you'll have $2.7 million. So you have to look at retirement as a long-term accumulation event. You're just accumulating assets, okay? Now, obviously, there's no guarantees here, but what you really, really want to make sure you talk with a retirement advisor so you can understand how much you need to save. Now, next thing is retiring too soon or not soon enough. If you think you're about to retiring soon, you may dream of quitting your job and traveling the world. However, before you call it quits, there's a number of reasons you may want to think things over. First, you may live longer than expected. You may run into unforeseen health issues or face tough financial times that force you to cut back. That's not to say you should retire early, but that's your plan. And run various scenarios to make sure your savings are going to cover your expenses during retirement. Maybe even think about creating a lifetime income with inflation steps up. Same with not retiring soon enough. If you're unsure your savings will be adequate, you'll worry as a result. Perhaps you work longer than you have to. I've met many people who thought they needed a certain number to retire safely. And after setting up a retirement plan with them, they come to find that they could have retired a few years early because they already had the assets. Hey, there's no need to work longer and have all that stress. All it does is shorten your life. So sit down with a financial advisor, determine the optimal time to retire. You know what? The next thing is taking too much risk or not enough. Risk is a funny thing. Take too much and you can lose your savings. But take too little, you can lose purchasing power to inflation. The money in retirement is money that you can't replace. That's why we lean towards low risk, low return investments as we age. But as inflation erodes the last value of money, it seems that safe next egg drops in value in terms of what you can buy. Sometimes if you take on too much risk, it's not good. And sometimes you take on too little, it creates its own problem. Now, again, I want to thank you all for joining us here on Saving with Steve. I want to thank a few of my affiliates, UK Health Radio, BBS Radio, Talk Radio in New York City, AM/FM 24/7. All these networks are dedicated to empowering you to solve problems, uplift your spirit, live a life of financial and personal freedom. You can always follow us on Facebook. Stay safe, stay healthy. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.
Everyone has their own unique views and needs when it comes to financial success. If you'd like to leave your financial woes behind and live a life of financial freedom, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Saving with Steve show, hosted by Steve Sexton. The show will help you with the ins and outs of money. We talk about financial issues that could be costing you thousands of dollars and keeping you up at night. We talk about money, tax reduction, saving more, spending less, 401ks, risk management, retirement, and everything under the sun that relates to you having a healthier, happy relationship with money. Now, here is your host of Saving with Steve, Steve Sexton, on UK Health Radio.
Hey, welcome to the Saving with Steve show, where we talk about the ins and outs of money, pretty much everything under the sun that relates to you having a happier, healthier relationship with money. This is a special recording because we've had a power outage and I've had to go down the line to another office and use my hotspot. So hopefully we're going to have a good time. We're going to get all the stuff there. Hey, last week we talked to Sophia Mendel from Value Ping when she was discussing the best credit cards to use if you're traveling, whether you're traveling domestic or worldwide. I'll also be talking about the retirement saving benchmarks to keep you on track. But first, we have Matty Lanston. He's a scientist, nutritionist, podcast host, health coach that specializes in weight loss, self-confidence for professional women and busy moms. Matty has a weekly podcast on how to not get sick and die. That's special. It provides his followers and clients with deep dive into nutrition and how to develop healthy habits that last. So, Matty, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate the invite. I'm looking forward to unpacking whatever we talk about.
Well, you know what? What a lot of people don't realize, and they maybe do, maybe they don't, but they go on these paths where they're just eating horribly and they're not really taking care of themselves, and it causes them health issues. As a result, health issues cost money. And prolonged health issues, it's a shorter life, and it's a less fulfilling life. When we have an opportunity, whether somebody's in Australia like you or somewhere else in the world or here in the States, that can really provide some useful information that can impact the quality of somebody's life, it makes a difference. Our audience loves to hear it. So first of all, I'd like to just start unpacking, why does the diet culture cause more problems than it actually cures?
That's a really good question. And it's interesting, I guess this whole podcast is about finance, because diet culture is fundamentally a marketing strategy that results in the income of money for businesses in the short term and limited results for clients. And it's that instant gratification. Every health challenge or weight loss challenge seems to be getting shorter and shorter. Once upon a time, everybody knew that it would take some time because it took some time to develop this body and this situation. Then they sort of came down in size. It was 6 months, 3 months, 28 days, 2 weeks, getting smaller and smaller. But the genetics of the body haven't changed in that time at all to adapt to that kind of behavior. And now we've got, arguably some scam companies out there that sell detox teas, which, have made millions and millions and millions of dollars, which are essentially laxative teas. That's not a good thing for the body. And so diet culture essentially is the idea that you can get a massive return on very little investment, and that you go in and out. Basically, you sort of go all in for a short period of time, and then you feel deprived, you feel restricted, you haven't had the food you like, you're probably hungry, and then you just go, I'm out. Once the program's over, or even during the program, you're like, screw it. I'm going back to pizza and chocolate and wine because that made me happy. The space that I work in is working with the real cause of the problem of our health issues, because I think diet culture doesn't address the real cause, and neither does a lot of the things that happen in the hospital. And I worked for 7 years at a cancer research hospital as a scientist, and it's often just band-aiding the problem. So companies are selling weight loss, right? Everybody wants weight loss. Everyone wants to look good, but nobody then peels the onion to look at what is underneath the behavior that's driving that, like those decisions that happen in your life. And often it's got a lot to do with self-confidence, emotional eating, sugar addiction, eating when you're stressed, being in this world of abundant dopamine. And what I mean by that, dopamine's the happy hormone. So we've perpetually got access to social media, sugar, all these things that make us feel good in some way for a microsecond. And we just keep chasing it down the rabbit hole. We're all dopamine addicts to some degree. And Facebook in Silicon Valley, has a giant floor of psychological engineers that are working every day to make their app more addictive to your dopamine pathways. The exact same things happening in the sugar industry. So, it's not just, I need to know which nutrition to eat. In my experience, I've spoken at conferences all over the world, retreats, wellness events. I've never met a person that didn't know meat and vegetables was a good idea. Everybody knows what to eat. The question is, why don't I eat it?
I was listening to what you said, and my wife does this thing called a 21-day fix, where she's supposed to work out so many times a day. She reduces what she's eating and all that kind of stuff. But quite frankly, for 21 days, she's miserable. And 21 days, she loses some weight. It's all great. But about 3-4 weeks later, it starts coming back on. Those habits are gone. And she hates, it's one of those things where she has to build herself up. So, okay, I got to do this. I got to look good for this. I got to look good for that. And it doesn't work.
And that's because a lot of those programs use the metric or use the tool of willpower. And you don't have to go far in your own life, maybe this week, to realize willpower didn't last very long. And it's not designed to last very long. It's not a function of the brain that's designed to last a long period of time. And so when you're setting your mind up for misery and knowing that things aren't going to go well, you're not going to feel good, but you're going to get this tiny little advantage that'll make you feel good for about 5 minutes. It's obviously so meaningless that you give it up straight away. The process hasn't gone deep enough. We've got to peel the onion, and it's not just about behavior change and habits. It's about an identity shift. And you want to decide to be a different version of yourself from now on. And that's not an easy process. That takes some work, some deep work, and looking into the reason that the current version of you flourishes. And it's the same with money habits, right? It's the same with any habits in our life. There's a reason that what we do now is what we do by default. And that's usually because our central nervous system and our reptilian brain, the deepest part of our brain that developed first, it is always seeking security, safety, and certainty in the environment so that it can predict that we won't die today, which sounds like an extreme example, but evolutionary biology says that we're always scanning our environment to make sure that is true. And so if we've lived a life where we, unconsciously adopted these money beliefs or habits from our parents, our food habits from our parents or the people in our environment, and we've never really considered them before, we're just on autopilot. And then we do realize that, these things are in place. They weren't mine to decide. I inherited them. But now that I'm aware of them, it's really hard to change them because I've been safe and secure and certain of my environment living this way for my entire life. I haven't died in 40 years. I'm still here. So the central nervous system basically operates on the idea of the devil you know is better than the devil you don't.
When we start looking at understanding how weight loss is really not about the food, it is about the psychology. I need you to break that down so people can understand why it is about the psychology and not always about what you eat.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think it comes back to just sort of what we've been discussing already, which is that it's so easy to get pleasure. People might not think that eating a little piece of chocolate is safety or security or all of those things. But when we're stressed, our hormones, cortisol and adrenaline go up, which tells our mind and our central nervous system that there's danger. And so we naturally want to swing to the other side of the spectrum, which is dopamine and serotonin, which is happiness, pleasure, or even oxytocin, which is human connection and safety. And so the fastest way to do that is with man-made, heavily manipulated, refined sugars and carbohydrates because they feel pleasurable. They're mouth pleasure. They're not pleasure for any other part of the body. So we have to figure out how in our mind we can access those dopamine and safety, security, certainty mechanisms that not from food. And that's a significant part of what I do in my program. It's learning to identify in your environment other ways to get those needs met that are not with food, whilst simultaneously changing the narrative that you have in your life about the struggle and the stress and the pain. Because, again, we've got to come at it from both sides. We've got to address the problem, but we also have to come up with a different solution.
That's wonderful. Hey, look, we're going to need to take a quick little break. So please stick with us. We'll be right back with more Saving Steve. We're going to talk about your ins and outs of money. So stick with us. We're going to pay some bills and be back in a few seconds.
More expert advice for having a happier relationship with money still to come on the Saving with Steve show on UK Health Radio. Welcome back to the show that is here to help you achieve your financial goals. It's the Saving with Steve show. Now here's your host, Steve Sexton on UK Health Radio.
Hey, I really want to thank everyone for letting your friends and family know, hey, we have well more than 600,000 people listening to the show. Just in the United States and internationally, it's over 60,000. If you want to check out some of the replays, you just go to savingwithsteve.us. If you're enjoying the stories of helpful insights with Saving and Steve, I encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Google Play. So you don't miss a show. You can check us out on a few of our affiliates at UK Health Radio, BBS Radio, Talk Radio, New York City, as well as AM/FM 247. All these networks are dedicated to empowering you to solve problems, uplift your spirit, and live a life of personal and financial freedom. If you'd like to follow us on Facebook, you can always go to Saving with Steve Sexton for guest gifts, replays, the whole shot. So we're back with Maddie Lanston. This is just unbelievable. If you're looking at the dieting side of things, the psychology behind it, we're talking about it all. It's really important that you understand some of these things when you go into dieting, and especially if you've been through that cycle of dieting where, hey, you're doing good for a couple months and then you just go off the rails. So you know what? We have Maddie Lanston. You know, it's wonderful. He's got this wonderful podcast. You really want to check it out because it can make a difference in your life. And I just love the title. So it's a weekly podcast. And Maddie, when does the podcast run? What days?
Wednesday here in Australia, and so Tuesday for the US.
Okay, perfect. And the podcast is named How to Not Get Sick and Die. Very simple, very straightforward. But you know what? When it comes to talking about the ins and outs of money, the healthier you stay, the less money you spend, the less of your money falls through the cracks to healthcare that you don't want to. And you know what? If you stay healthy, you can redirect those things to what's important to you, like having wonderful experiences and so on, being with family members and all that. So let's keep talking to Maddie here. Let's talk about low-carb nutrition for weight loss and emotional eating. That's a topic we got to unpack there.
Yeah, sure. So I guess there's two different concepts in that question. So emotional eating, basically every single human, at least in the Western world where we've got privilege, excess of food everywhere, is an emotional eater. If you eat at your desk whilst you're working, you're an emotional eater. If you eat with your phone in your hand whilst watching TV, you're an emotional eater. If you eat while you're driving, you're an emotional eater. And the idea of somebody that emotionally eats is to identify, am I eating food when I'm not totally 100% present with what's happening in the current moment? And often in all of those situations, we're distracted by something else. And you might even be in a situation where sometimes you eat, or you even like you get some chocolate or something that you really want to enjoy, and you eat it and you don't even remember eating it because you weren't present. And you're like, oh my God, the packet's empty already. I need another one. And so the catch with emotional eating is that we use things, and this is the same for men, even though men might feel weird about some of these words. We use it for comfort. We use it for nurture. We use it to soothe all of these uncomfortable emotions that we may be aware or not aware that are coming up, which is stress, discomfort, anger, frustration. You know, it might be a fight with your partner, and you might find that there's a loop that every time you come together to solve the problem or to get over it, you order a pizza. Like, we're using food to solve emotional problems. And a lot of this happens because, one, the dopamine situation that I mentioned before of like making us feel like we're back in control and we're understanding what's going on. And the food is, these dopamine spikes is allowing us to feel that the stress is going down. We're back in the driver's seat of our own life. However, obviously putting that food into our body is tearing our body down. It's meaning we're going to get brain fog. We're going to gain weight. We're not going to be able to focus. Our performance is going to be limited. You know, obviously you can connect that to not making great money decisions. And the other thing too is that the world is becoming so automated that there's no pain response in the brain when you part ways with your money. That's what they discovered with the credit card when they first discovered that if you delay the pain of giving up the finance, that you could get so much more money out of people whilst they were just stuck in the first decision of making the purchase. And so we've got the same situation with the food we make. It's like you are not connected through your phone to the actual expenditure of the money emotionally. You're not connected to it leaving your bank account. You press a couple of buttons inside of Uber, and it's getting to the point where basically Uber, or maybe even Amazon Prime, the next step is that they will literally feed you, like they'll literally put the food in your mouth. So there's no connection to what is this food doing to me, or what is the money expenditure on this stuff doing to my bank account, you know? And so we've got to reconnect all of those dots, which were once really natural because we'd hand over physical cash and be like, oh, I'm giving away something that I've earned. Like right now I'm making a trade. Is this a worthwhile trade? And it's the same thing we have to think about with food, because if we're eating high sugar, high refined carbohydrate diets, anything in a bag, a box, or a can that's man-made, it's highly likely that it's manipulated in an unfavorable way for your biology. Then we're making that same decision without thinking about the consequences, because obviously we don't have a feast and we gain 10 pounds in one sitting. It's the same thing. We eat all this food and the consequences come later. But we're not really connected to them. And so we need to understand, I guess, that moving to a nutrition, or an approximate nutrition plan that resembles how humans survived the first 500,000 years is where we need to head. Because even though there's all this amazing technology and all these different foods that exist in 2022, our genetics have not changed in thousands and thousands of years, which is why we have, no matter how good medicine is becoming and how great calorie counters are becoming, we've got a world that is overweight, sick, and dying at younger ages than ever before. And that's because we've got a food industry and also like a social industry that doesn't support health. And why would they want to? Because healthy people don't buy drugs. Healthy people aren't addicted to their phones. You know, there's a lot of economic incentive in these companies to keep you unwell and to keep you unfocused and not performing very well, but performing good enough that they can get some productivity out of you for their company. And so we have to move to a dietary template, generally speaking, that resembles, how humans have survived for thousands and thousands of years. And in most parts of the world, that's going to be low carbohydrate. Now, it's really important, especially for women, to know that that's not no carbohydrate. There's a very big difference. When I speak about no carb, it's refined sugars and carbohydrates. You can have all the vegetables you like, even though like vegetables are 99% carbohydrates, most of them. So vegetables are a very, very important part, particularly for women's menstrual cycles and that type of thing. The other thing is in this world is with that low carb nutrition template is that there shouldn't be a list of foods that you can't have, because that psychology of not being allowed to have something is why diets fail. You get to the end and you're like, oh, I finally get the chocolate. I finally get the wine. I finally get the pizza back. Like as soon as we have this narrative between, I really, really want it, don't do it. Really, really want it, don't do it. Like everybody knows who wins, right?
That's just a takeaway.
Yeah, totally.
That's like, it's like the kid jumping, I want this, and you're just right here. You know what, Maddie, this has been wonderful. I want to thank you for being here today, but I would like to take a few minutes and have you talk about your podcast, how people can get a hold of you, whether it be through the internet, by phone. I know you're in Australia, but I think people all over the world need your help.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So my website is just mattylansdown.com. So mattylansdown.com. So you can check out a bunch of things there. I've got a Facebook group, which is designed for women and busy mothers. So come and hang out there with us. I'll send over the link, Steve. And the podcast, How to Not Get Sick and Die. So it's been described as a one-stop shop for health and wellness. We've got phenomenal guests and I do a lot of solo episodes myself. So come and hang out. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share that, Steve.
Maddie, this has been wonderful. I'm going to say that 85% of our listeners are female between the age of 45 and 65. When I started sharing about what you do and all the resounding responses, oh yeah. So I think you might have a few people come and take a look at your podcast and take a look at your website to see how you can help them. So again, I want to thank you so much for joining us and shedding the light on many of the things that we all struggle with and that there's an actual answer, which is very, very cool. And with that, I just wish you to stay safe, stay healthy. I would love to have you back sometime soon.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Steve. And same to you. I appreciate your time and energy and this connection. And hopefully people get something out of it.
Great. Hey, look, guys, stick with us. We're going to be right back with more Saving with Steve.
More expert advice for having a happier relationship with money still to come on the Saving with Steve show on UK Health Radio.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. The station that makes you feel good.
Welcome back to the show that is here to help you achieve your financial goals. It's the Saving with Steve show. Now here's your host, Steve Sexton on UK Health Radio.
Hey, welcome back to the show. I would truly want to thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you letting your friends, family, and associates know about the show. All the replays are available at savingwithsteve.us. If you're enjoying the stories of helpful information and insight in Saving with Steve, then I encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel or Google Play channel so you can never miss a show, and check out a few of our affiliates at UK Health Radio, BBS Radio, Talk Radio New York City, E360 TV. All these networks are dedicated to empowering you to solve problems, uplift your spirit, and live a life of personal and financial freedom. You can also follow us on Facebook, join the Saving with Steve Sexton Insiders Club, get all the guest replays, exclusive gifts, and so on. We just finished with Maddie Lanston. It's time to talk. We're a little more than halfway through the year. It's a great time to start looking at your retirement saving benchmarks to make sure you're on track. How do you know if you're on track for retirement? What are the benchmarks? As you save for retirement, it's beneficial to know how much to save, whether you're on the right track. From everyone's situation is different, of course, but there are some useful retirement benchmarks that can give you some sense of how you're doing to reach your goals. After comparing your numbers to the benchmarks, you can then work on making any necessary adjustments and then check your progress on a regular basis. To set your retirement savings benchmark, you need to consider two factors: how much you've already saved for retirement at your current age, then compare your savings against your current gross income to begin setting savings goals based off your income. So what is a good retirement savings goal? Many financial institutions experts have a few guidelines to help answer those questions. Now, for example, when it comes to Fidelity, has created the following set of benchmarks on ages for people that are 50 or 60. So if you're looking at 50 years old, you should have 6 times your annual salary. Okay, what does that mean? If you're 50 and you make $30,000 a year, you should have about $180,000 saved. Okay, if you're 55, it's 7 times, 60, it's 8 times, and 67, it's 10 times your annual salary. Another benchmark concept aimed to replace nearly 80% of your current annual income in retirement so you can maintain your lifestyle once you retire. Of course, the big unknowable is how long you will live and how long should your savings last, okay? Now, here's an example using the 85% rule on life expectancy. Say you were born in 1970, you're now 51, and you want to retire at 67. You'll retire at 2037. Let's assume your annual income is $40,000. If you expect to retire in 20 years after retirement, you'll need $32,000 times 20 or $640,000 in retirement savings. Then you want to look at the 4% rule for retirement draws, another widely used benchmark to help you determine how much your retirement saving you can afford to withdraw each year in your retirement. The 4% rule it suggests that you withdraw 4% of your retirement balance. Now, there's many financial experts that are actually saying, hey, instead of a 4% rule, you need to take a 3% rule. The reality is you need to have something comfortable on a distribution standpoint. You need to look at your average rates of return, where you're looking at, okay? When determining how much you need to save, it also help consider, these 3 things: the amount. Experts suggest saving at least 15% of your pre-tax income annually if you can. Find out where you're at and keep pushing towards your goals, because retirement is a long-term accumulation event. The key is accumulate as much as you possibly can. You know what? I want to thank you all for joining us today on Saving with Steve, where we talk about the ins and outs of money. Today we had Maddie Lanston. He was talking about the proper way to diet and how to get past those triggers that keep you going back and not being able to lose weight, or you lose the weight and gain it back. He worked with people all the time. You want to go to his website. He's something special. With that, I wish you all well. Stay safe, stay healthy. We'll look forward to seeing you next week right here on Saving with Steve. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on the Saving with Steve show, hosted by Steve Sexton on UK Health Radio. To learn more about the show and how to become a guest or sponsor, visit savingwithsteve.us. That's savingwithsteve.us. Join us again next time as we continue to talk about everything under the sun that relates to you having a healthier, happier relationship with money. This has been the Saving with Steve show, hosted by Steve Sexton on UK Health Radio.